many of us ever know what it is to become the perfect version of ourselves.
This is Decoding Superhuman with your host, Boomer Anderson.
Hey there, Superhuman. It's Boomer Anderson here, your host of this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this podcast is I get to speak to experts, guys like Wolfgang Unsold, who's the strength and conditioning coach for 16 different Olympic athletes. Someone like Dr. Benjamin Smar, who's working on the frontiers of sleep research. And what we do is we're able to take their research and their years and years of experience and distill it into bite-sized pieces of information, which you can use in your everyday life to just elevate your performance. My guest today is no different. He is Bulgarian wonder kid Daniel Georgiev. Daniel developed a program that I use every single day on my computer, on my phone, and also on my iPad. And it's called Iris. Think of Iris as Flux or Night Shift on steroids. Iris allows you to control the temperature of your screen, the flicker in the background, which may cause eye pain, but also blue light, which I know is a little bit of a diva in the light world these days. Daniel developed this program after experiencing eye damage at a young age due to excessive amounts of programming. And Iris has really revolutionized my relationship with the computer in terms of my day-to-day work. I'm able to work longer, more effectively, and know that my eyes are not getting damaged because of Iris. So I was really glad when Daniel said he would come on the show. Daniel and I get into a lot. First, we talk a little bit about what goes on in Daniel's day-to-day, how he's able to exercise every single day, how he really gets to delve into books. And then we talk about the founding of Iris, how Daniel, this is crazy, spent nights in the back of his car sleeping while developing Iris and then just going to shower in the gym in the morning. You can tell the guy puts a lot of emphasis on health. Daniel's been featured in magazines like Forbes, on Mercola's website, and he's done a TED Talk, which I'll link to in the show notes. The show notes for this particular episode are at decodingsuperhuman.com/Iris. I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and I'll pass it on to my interview with Daniel Georgiev. Have an excellent day. Daniel, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Boomer.
If you don't mind, I want to kick things off by just hearing your background story. How did you become obsessed with the eyes?
So, I want to start that I'm 21 years of age right now, and I spent really long time because I'm a programmer. I was spending really long hours in front of the computer. Actually, when I was young, I wanted to become an Olympic athlete. And I was training different sports. I stopped throwing and trained for 6 years. I was in the national team. I go to World Throwing Championship. But, things happen. I started work. And the work I started was programming. The path to this decision was a couple of years of non-stop sitting in front of the computer. And because I always wanted to create something in my spare time when I was not working, I was basically sitting again at the computer, and for a day I was sitting for more than 12 hours every day. And it turned out that this is not so healthy after some months. My eyes started hurting a lot, burning. I go to eye doctor, and he told me that I need to put glasses. And this was a super shock for me because my vision was perfect. After this point, I just started researching everything I can find about the eyes to read every single medical research article and everything. And the first version of Iris was something super stupid. It was one timer which locks your monitor at some time because I cannot force myself to get off to the computer, and I needed something like this. I tried to place an alarm on my phone, and what happened was basically that the alarm was ringing all day, and this was super stupid.
So basically, some of your research said you just needed to take a break, and you found it hard for yourself to take a break. Is that right?
Yes, I just cannot force myself to get out of the computer. After several months of this non-stop working and programming and just burning my eyes to hell, I get to eye doctor, and because I was dropping eye drops all the time, I was using old eye drops and a lot. and I was going outside with sunglasses. Oh, it was really bad actually. I remember that I just was at night. I was sitting with closed eyes because I cannot watch anything. I'm not sure how many people have got to this point to up their vision, but with my perfect vision, I get to 1 diopter of eyeglasses or more, which was really strange because it was not of age thing because I was young.
Do you mind just sharing your experiences with Flux?
When I was researching all the programs, I found other programs, and then I found Flux for the first time. This is the popular blue light reduction program, but I just hated how I can't move it manually. I wanted to just move it manually as I like, and there was no feature for this. There was only automatic, and I was raging all day because I just wanted to do this, and wrote to the guys several times, the creators of Flux, that I want this feature to manually control the blue light and the brightness of the screen, and they didn't respond to me, and I get angry and added the blue light thing into Iris. It took me some months, but I did it.
Yeah, I have to say, I came upon Iris after I had my own issues with Flux. Had Flux on my computer, and then one day it sort of, I'm not sure, Danielle, if you're too young to remember this, but there was an episode or a couple of episodes of this horrible TV show called The Teletubbies that used to have these flashing yellow lights. My Flux actually started doing that on my computer screen. So I was looking for an alternative, and thank the Lord I found yours. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Iris itself, if you don't mind, because most of our listeners are sort of, think of them as people who are under a lot of pressure. They face a lot of stress. Why should people actively seek to block blue light using Iris?
So at first I thought that Iris is made for more older people which have problems with their eyes because younger people doesn't have this. But after I use it every day, I realize more and more that you can actually work more, be more, to do more because you don't feel pain. It's like not steroid, but food enhancement for the eyes, something like this, which is really good and make you can work more hours without pain, which is super nice.
Why is blue light a problem for people when they're trying to sleep and when they're trying to focus?
So at first I thought that the blue light is the biggest problem, but I think now that it's the flicker thing is more of a problem for the eyes. Dr. Mercour, one friend of mine, always talks that sunlight is good because it's a full spectrum light. But monitors emit some strange colors with LED lighting in the back. And particularly the blue light is with the shortest wavelength. This wavelength goes deeply into the eye and is bad for the retina. This is the one thing. And the second thing is that because we didn't have clocks in the ancient times, we oriented if it's day or night by the blue sky. And looking at blue light controls the secretion of our sleep hormone, melatonin. We have one photoreceptor in the eyes evolved from these ancient times, which controls when you go to sleep based on if the sky is blue or if you are looking on blue light.
Well, let's talk about Iris and why Iris is better than all of these other alternatives.
Think of the other programs like Paint and of Iris like Photoshop. When you need something, most people don't want this and they don't add it to the program. For example, Flux works only automatically. You can control Iris how you want, to the dating, the nighting, the hours to change the transition time, the amount of blue light, and all these things are really helpful and they're in Iris. And this is why a lot of people use it. Over the months, I tried to make it more and more and more easy because more and more non-technical people started to use Iris. And basically, Iris mirroring, for example, now works only with double click. You don't need anything else. You just double click it and it does everything automatically. With Iris, you can detect room lighting, and there are a lot of things actually. For me, the bigger problem is the flicker of the backlight, which is called pulse width modulation. And this thing is actually the thing that makes our eyes hurt. As I'm focused about the eyes because I don't think the sleep is this of a problem because you just can turn off your PC. But you need to work on your PC all day, and the flicker thing is actually killing your eyes.
So Daniel, just repeat, what's the flicker called again?
When you change the brightness, the cheapest way to control it is called pulse width modulation, and this is changing of the frequency of the backlight. Actually, think of it like go to the lights of your room and turn them on and off, on and off, on and off all the time, and see what happens with your retina, with your pupil, I guess.
Sounds like I'm gonna have a seizure.
Yes, and this is what happens behind your monitor. The flicker rate is really high and you can't perceive it, but your eyes start to synchronize with this. And it's like pumping in the fitness, pumping your muscle, you know. Every second this happens hundreds of times per second. So you need this flicker rate to be the maximum amount so to not feel eye pain.
Does Iris have an embedded adjustment for the flicker rate, or
Yes, and this is actually the innovation I make with Iris, which a lot of people don't understand because it's so innovative and there is no other program in the world which does this.
the color temperatures and sort of, I believe those are in kelvins, right? Do you mind explaining what that exactly means for people who may not be familiar?
Candle is emitting one light source. Fluorescent lighting is emitting other light source, and the more blue is the light, the bigger the value of color temperature.
Okay, so let's say if you say 0 is black, then 5,000 would be blue. Is that correct, or something of that nature?
No change. No change is 6,500. This is no change at all to normal lighting. And from this, all lower values decrease the amount of blue light.
Okay, so normal lighting is 6,500, and everything else below that is decreasing the value of blue light, correct?
Yes, and sunlight is 5,000.
Let's talk a little bit about the features that you plan for Iris in the future. Is there anything that you're working on now which you wouldn't mind giving a sneak preview to the audience?
Oh yes, of course. Right now I'm working to get the new Iris because I changed a little bit the UI of the big Iris to work on Windows XP, which is really hard, believe me. But many people use XP, and I want them to have something to work on. Iris is the only program which works on Linux. The other thing is that Iris is the only program in the world which works on iOS without jailbreaking. I'm not sure if you have jailbreaked your phone.
No jailbreaking here.
But I found a way to get Iris working in a browser. And I'm going to make a browser for iOS which is going to be in the App Store. Basically, this browser, everything in it would be with lower blue light. Other apps will not be affected and you can use night light, but in the browser it will be perfect Iris with perfect colors, so the options to brightness, to customize it when you want. Actually, I'm working also on font rendering in the browser. It will be really awesome and it will be in the App Store for sure because they will allow it.
Getting the settings right for a graphic designer or a visual designer, how would they use Iris when color matters so much to them?
I have think a lot about the designers, and for example, Iris Mini, it's one icon in the lower corner of your screen, and by clicking it, you change modes. There are three modes. One is automatic, work automatically. The second is manual, work all the time. And the third is post. Basically, when you open Photoshop, you click the post mode, and your colors are calibrated again. Your colors are perfect. You work when you close Photoshop, you turn on Iris again. So this is the manual and the most easy thing. But for example, in Iris, you can select programs which will pause Iris. For example, when you start Photoshop, Iris will pause itself automatically. And the third way, which is, I'm not sure how many people use it, but there is something called overlay mode, which works similar to the Android apps for blue light reduction with overlay, but you can select part of the screen which will be affected by Iris. And for example, at the center of your screen, you can have your Photoshop or perfect colors, and around this little box, you can have lowered blue light and brightness, which is really nice.
If someone wanted to read more about blue light and this screen flickering that we've been talking about here, what would your top resources be?
Well, one way is Google. The second way, I think Iris is the best resource in the world. And not like the software, but the articles I wrote. Dr. Mercola has some really good articles on phone, on Flickr and on Blue Light.
So your website, Daniel, is iristech.co. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I found you a wealth of information when it comes to this. And as I mentioned, spending 8.5 years in front of a screen, 12 hours plus a day, probably didn't do a number for my eyes. And I wish I had Iris. A couple more questions here, Daniel, if you don't mind. You yourself, and I've read your blog, you're a big advocate of exercise and weight training. You're also Bulgarian, which comes with a great history of powerlifting. I have to ask, what does your training regimen look like?
Over the years, it changed a lot. When I was young, it was basically, when I was training football, it was basically running and playing with ball. When I was training rowing, it was skiing, swimming, running, weightlifting, and rowing is really complex sports, and I learned so much different sports. For example, I learned skiing because of rowing. We get to really high altitude to train, so you can increase your aerobic capacity. And right now, because I am a programmer and work super hard, my training regime is I go to the fitness for 30 minutes or 1 hour every day. I go to the fitness every day and try to make it a habit. And I just, switch different muscle groups. One day you train chest, the other day you train back, like every other person who goes to the gym, at least in Bulgaria. And at night I'll go to dancing for several hours. This is actually I train a lot.
I went for an introductory lesson because my girlfriend's a salsa dancer, and
Really?
yeah, it was absolutely hilarious because she's very good at it, and I would say the rhythm. I did not get the rhythm gene according to 23andMe.
Well, try with one song on repeat, and try until you know the rhythm and start to count. It should work. It's not really hard.
Do you have any sort of hacks or performance improving tips that you use outside of Iris?
Well, Iris is a really big performance improvement for me because it's for PC and it helps me to work like hell.
I should just interject and say it helped me a lot too. The timer, the working timer, is brilliant, and I do like the strict mode so that I have to leave my computer for a few minutes.
You know what is strange? That I don't use it anymore, and this is why it's off by default. The first reason is because people was cursing me because their screen was locked. A lot of people didn't like it. I know it's super awesome, but more non-technical people, why this thing is locking my screen?
Why is it preventing me from working?
Yes, and they hate me, and I turn it off by default. So in the newest version, it's off by default, and I personally don't use it because I don't know when with the blue light and brightness reduction, I don't need it. I can work all day. I don't need glasses, but I have bought some with little diopter to help me focus a little better. To just like looking at some more distance, something like this. And with all these things, I don't need anything else. For the computer, other performance improvement, I think it's really important to work out every day. Make it some habit. At first, I just go for a shower in the gym. Basically, I started going to take showers because it was period of my life when I was at one point homeless, living in my car. It was really bad.
Oh wow, really?
So the story is actually it's popular in Bulgaria because television and things have spoken with me about this. But Iris is like a startup, and it was really really hard for me. When I left my job for this. I left university. I didn't want to talk about this in the podcast, but it was one of these periods of my life when I just thought to myself, I'm going to make it or I'm going to die. At this point, I left university, left my job. I was living with my parents back then, go out from home. Now things are good. Now things are good, and looking back, it doesn't seem so hard, but there was period back then when it was really hard.
And just before we close, Daniel, where do you want listeners to go to find out more about your product? Should we send them all to iristech.co?
Well, where else? I'm not sure. Aside from my broken English, my TED talk is really good. if you get the transcript of the talk, it's 5 minute talk, and I explain all the things. Really simple.
For all the users listening, I'll make sure that everything that Daniel and I discussed is in the show notes. I want to thank you in closing for creating this amazing product. You've helped me work a lot more effectively and still sleep okay, which is nice.
Can I just when you was talking, when we was talking about performance improvements, I think the best thing in my life that I have done is that I have read a lot of books, and this is for everything, for sports, for entrepreneurship, for all the people. I think reading good books is one of the best thing you can invest your money on, not supplements or I don't know. Books are one of the best investments, and they're really cheap.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I had a boss when I was younger who made me read a book, and he said the only takeaway I want you to get from that book is that successful people read a lot.
Warren Buffett reads 8 hours a day, and he's the richest man on the world.
Okay. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time again. And I gotta say, many thanks. And my health thanks you a lot for creating Iris. It's a brilliant piece of software.
Thank you. This means a lot to me.
As Daniel taught me earlier, na zdrowie to everybody out there. Did I get that right, Daniel?
Na zdravie, na zdravie.
Na zdrowie. Okay. All right. Have a good one, everyone.
Before you go there, Superhuman, are you enjoying these podcast episodes? If so, can you go to the iTunes store and just leave a brief comment as well as a 5-star rating? It would really help get the word out about precision health. I really hope you have an epic day.